Thank you. Thanks. So I'm sweating profusely. I'm not having a heart attack. I can't because Dr. Barry's not here, right? I'm not nervous. It's a lot hotter in the mountains of Tennessee than the mountains of Utah, where I'm from. So the humidity is getting me. So if you know who I am, you know that I usually talk about investing and stock market stuff. And if that's what you came to hear today, not really going to get that, but I'll around later and we can talk about that too. Today I want to talk about building wealth in a different way because I don't hate money, so I always talk about wealth. But I want to talk about it in terms of your own personal success, because my mantra is you can't get rich quick overnight. It's all about earn, save, invest, and you can't earn anything unless you have some skills or abilities, and a lot of us have a lot more than we think we have. And so some of that's what I want to talk about. As far as my titles, sometimes I like to come up with obscure titles. Trade with other tribes. You may not know what that means yet. Hopefully, by the time I get done with this presentation, you'll figure it out. And leverage your strengths. Okay, this is about your own personal success. It may seem really obvious that you would leverage your strengths, but maybe not so obvious. So let's get into the presentation. Self-Reliance Festival. Okay, words are not always the way they seem, or we use words in ways that maybe aren't the proper way. So personally, I wouldn't call this a Self-Reliance Festival, but I'm not a marketer and I really suck at that, so don't take my word for it. But I would call this an Inner Reliance Festival, okay? Because we're interdependent. We really know that no man's an island. And anybody that thinks that they're totally resilient or self-independent or totally self-reliant, right? They're fooling themselves. We all need a sense of community, and really, in effect, that's why we're here, right? Because we could be self-reliant at home. We're here for the community, and the community is a great thing. That's really where we ultimately do get our strength. And it's not just the community; it's a community of strong, self-resilient, self-reliant people that make the community strong. And whenever you have a community like that, everybody in the community is even stronger. There is one problem, though, and as I go through this presentation, I think you're going to see me. I'll go back and forth, right? I'll say, well, on the one hand this, and on the other hand that. I'm not an economist, but back in the day, Harry Truman, president after World War II, probably remember him, he used to be briefed by economists. And they would always come in and say, well, President Truman, on the one hand, the economy is going to be good. On the other hand, it's going to be bad, back and forth. And Truman was famous for saying, get me a one-armed economist. So I'm not exactly a one-armed economist. I'm going to vacillate back and forth here, but I'm going to tell you, on the one hand, collaboration is perfect. We have to do that. That's why we have, family, friends, communities, tribes, right? We're here for the tribe. We need to have each other's backs, or we're never going to survive. So we need collaboration. But, right, on the other hand, it's been my experience, and I'm, older than just a lot of you. It's tough walking into a room and being the oldest guy anymore. It's like, wow, where's my father here? I've learned over my lifetime that collaboration, I say often, leads to conformity. It almost always leads to conformity. And conformity is your biggest enemy, okay? If you don't take anything away from what I say today, conformity is the enemy. I don't know if you can all see that picture, but if you remember about 5 years ago during the pandemic, they had marching bands wearing face masks with holes cut in them so they could play trumpets and clarinets and saxophones, right? The most asinine, really think about that. You think about how stupid that really is. 50 years from now, people will be not even believing that was true. They'll think it was artificially intelligent created, right? No, this really happened, okay? And it really doesn't get any stupider than that, okay? Honestly, prior to the pandemic, I used to think people were dumb, but like now I'm like, people are really stupid, okay? They really will believe anything. The sad part, though, is, right, we're 5 years into this, and people still haven't learned the lesson, right? You can just look at events around you every day. Metaphorically, people are still wearing face masks with holes cut in them, right? It's ridiculous. So that's conformity. That's the best example I can give you for conformity. And the reason conformity is so prevalent is, guess why? It's, the old who does it benefit thing. We have a conformed society because conformity is a control mechanism. And so the powers, right, the man, he wants to control you. The best way he can do it is through conformity. And, you know, we've heard of peer pressure. We hear that with our kids, you know, it's peer pressure. It's the pressure, right? That's the control mechanism. Kids go along with the crowd because they're taught that way from a young age. And it usually either gets them in trouble or makes them mediocre, right? You know what happens to adults? It gets you in trouble or it makes you mediocre. Conformity literally is the enemy. I don't know how many of you were in the military. You know what that's like. And I suffered through many years of it. Some of it was good. I needed it. I went in the Marines as a 17-year-old kid. I needed a good, I won't say kick in the butt thing because we already heard about that earlier today, but I needed a good kick in the pants. I needed the discipline. So that was good, but I didn't need all the conformity. And unfortunately, I'll tell you, the best part of being in the Marines was I did learn the discipline and I learned the strength that I had, but I also learned a lot of conformity that it took me years to get rid of later on. Because I was saying at lunch today, you know, I won't say all the words, but when I was in, if something was wrong, it would like suck it up, you know, with other phrases and adjectives and stuff added to that. You shouldn't always suck it up, right? There's reasons. In fact, years ago at Nicole's place, I did one presentation called something like "Be a Quitter." There are reasons to quit, and I quit many things too late. Should have quit them a lot earlier. You've heard the expression "herding cats," right? Again, that's the reason we use that expression, because cats can't be herded, right? The people that want to control you don't want you to be cats. They want you to be sheep. They want to be able to herd you. And the saddest part about conformity is that most times it's self-imposed, right? Again, I learned that. I went in the Marines. They taught me to conform to certain standards and attitudes. And long after I was out of the military, I was still forcing myself to conform to other things because I learned that's what you do, right? We don't quit. We don't surrender. You drive on to the objective. Well, again, it's, you know, Dr. Berry's technical term. That's bullshit. My Italian grandfather used to say bullshita. It's bullshita. Remember that when it comes to conforming, look in the mirror, because you are probably putting more constraints on yourself than the system is, okay? They definitely want you to conform, but they usually make you conform by thinking you have to, and you don't, right? You don't have to wear that stupid face mask with a hole cut in it. I know this crowd, though, and especially, by the way, hey, it's hot. It's late in the weekend. You guys are like the survivors. I hope you all win the prizes up here, because thanks for hanging into the end. But I know you all are thinking, hey, you're the renegades. You're not a conformist. You know, that's those other idiots, right? That's the sheeple. Not me. I'm not a conformist. I'm my own man, right? Or I'm my own woman. Well, really? Are you really not as much of a conformist as you think you are? Let me give you an example. And this is outside our tribe, but so we can kind of poke fun at them. But there was an MIT technology review article that was about hipsters, and it featured this image of this hipster up here. And somebody was taking them to court and suing them for infringement. And I asked Glenn, I don't know, it was patent infringement on his image. He thought that they'd used his image without his own, without his approval, and so he was trying to line up a $10 million lawsuit against them. As they went through the discovery process, though, they found out that this was actually a stock photograph, and it wasn't of that guy. So he thought his image was so unique that he couldn't even pick himself out from another photograph, right, of somebody that wasn't him. So a lot of times, we conform so much in our own little tribes that, yeah, we're different than them people out there, but are we really any different than people in here? And conformity is conformity, right? It's like sin, right? There's no good or bad part of it. If you're conforming, whether you're conforming to your group or you're conforming to an outside group, you're still conforming. And it still is, like I said, going to get you in trouble or going to make you mediocre. So why do I say that? Okay, conformity literally is the devil, okay? It will steal your soul. Okay, I literally believe everybody was put on this planet for a purpose, right? Everybody has a reason. And if you can, think about this. If you were put here for a specific purpose and reason, and we know that nobody's the same. Everybody has totally different DNA. You're all totally unique. And you were here for a purpose. If your purpose was to conform and be like everybody else, your creator wouldn't have made you different, right? It's not like a trick or a trap, not trying to force you to do something. You're put here for a purpose. And so you're violating your God-given right when you conform. That's why I say conformity is the devil. And even if you don't believe in creators or any of that kind of stuff, think about it. Conformity makes you, it's still the devil because it makes you self-loathing. It makes you hate yourself. It is literally stealing your soul. And, you'll go to the office and do what you have to do there, but then you'll come home and you'll be tired and depressed because, you had to fit in, you had to play corporate politics, you had to do whatever, or you had to conform somewhere else, right? You went to your Thanksgiving dinner with your family, your in-laws, and you had to sit there and keep your mouth shut, right? And you come home miserable because you don't want to conform. Conformity does, it literally steals your soul. I don't know who's as old as me. Have you ever seen the reruns of the Munsters? Anybody know who the Munsters are? A couple of you, okay. Remember Marilyn? She was the weird cousin. She was plain. She was ugly. Guys would come to date her and they'd come and meet the family and run out the door. No one wanted to be around Marilyn the way the Munsters thought it, right? Because they were the freaks, but they thought she was the freak. And literally, this is funny if it wasn't so sad. This is society. This is what they do to you. How many of you felt like you're that Marilyn, right? You're like, I'm the normal one. But everybody's telling you you're the weird one, right? You're the weird one for wanting to homeschool your kids. You're the weird one for wanting to, drink raw milk. It's funny when you call it raw milk. For drinking milk, right? Everybody else is drinking processed milk. But you're the weird one for wanting to drink just normal milk. And that's what they do. So when you're put in that situation, literally, think of poor Marilyn and think of the Munsters, and it's sad. And again, it took me maybe not decades, but years to learn this. That whole thing about conformity being a control mechanism, they do it through propaganda. And again, this is going to be one of those on the one hand, on the other hand thing. You've all heard things like, get out of your comfort zone, right? No pain, no gain. Don't take shortcuts, right? I had one of my kids. I used to think he was my dumbest kid. He's turned out to be one of my smartest kids. As a little kid, I would always tell him, say, you can't take shortcuts. He'd be like, why? You have to learn to do this math problem this way. Why? I can look up the answer and why I'm kind of finding out he wasn't so wrong about certain things. If you can take a shortcut, why force yourself to go the long way, right? The system wants you to not take a shortcut because probably they're not profiting from it, right? They're probably making money on you going to a university where you spend, $100,000 and come out of school with decades of debt when there's a shortcut you could take, right? They don't want you to know that. So when you hear these things, no pain, no gain, I'm going to tell you they're propaganda. They're not true. When I am in my zone, right, when I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do, I'm in an outer body experience, right? I don't get hungry. Nothing distracts me. I can have grandkids screaming in the background. I can have all kind of things going on, and I'm focused on whatever I'm doing. And if you have a hobby or something that you love, that's true, right? If you don't find that in your work, you know that you can do something where you just zone out, man. You're living in that moment and nothing distracts you. That's your comfort zone. Why would you get out of that? Why would you ever want to get out of what you're the best at, right? That is your most productive period. But yet the system will tell you, no, do things differently. And you see this guy pushing the tire, man. That's just a great illustration of it. They want you to do things the hard way because it benefits them. So as a nonconformist, as I mentioned at the beginning, I want you to leverage your strengths. And again, that sounds like makes sense. Why is it even relevant? It's because we don't leverage our strengths because of that propaganda. We're thinking we have to go to get this certain degree that we really don't need, or we think we have to wear a certain kind of clothes, or we think we have to live in a certain part of the city. You don't. You can be successful right where you are, being who you are, and I would argue that you can be more successful than anywhere else because you're where you should be. So nonconformity is the best way to leverage your strengths. And let me just give you an example. Put your dominant hand in the air. If you're right-handed or whatever, left-handed. I know some of you might be ambidextrous. Don't be bragging. Just if you're left-handed or right-handed, put it okay. Now take your dominant hand, put it behind your back. Okay. Now we're all one-arm economists, right? With your non-dominant hand, I want you to write your name, sign your signature. Now, for our young kids here today, I don't know if they teach a cursive anymore, but it's like this, right? Can you do it? I can't, right? If I had a stroke and my right side of my body was paralyzed, I'd be out of commission, right? Throw a ball. I throw a ball like a girl with my left hand. Yeah, you always see, that's good. That's good, Nicole. Nicole always threw a ball like a girl. Right? I can't do anything with my left hand. So when they tell you to get out of your comfort zone, think that in your mind. That's actually what they're telling you, right? They're telling you, go through life with a handicap. Self-impose a weakness on yourself so that we can control you, so that we can contain you. Okay? I'm going to use this example. I used it a couple years ago. If you heard me, it's going to be even better when I say it this time. Think about snakes. Who here hates snakes? Good. Okay? You hate snakes, spiders, stuff like that. You hate snakes. Imagine you walk into your house and you see a snake slither through your living room and go underneath your couch. Burn it down. She stole my line. She was here 2 years ago. That's what you'd do, right? You'd burn down your house. There's no way you're going to go get a broom or something or lift up that couch and get that snake out of there. You're just not going to do it. You hate snakes. Now, what if I tell you? Oh, no pain, no gain. Get out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid of snakes. Like, why? You hate snakes. Who cares? It's not life-threatening to be afraid of snakes. The other side, though, who loves snakes? No one here loves snakes? Okay, come on. It has to be. This is the wrong crowd. There's hardly anybody here that likes snakes. Is this Self-Reliance Festival? Okay. They're all over at Willis's coddling his snakes. Okay, so we do have a few people here that like snakes, right? Guess what? You hate snakes? You love snakes? That's a marriage made in heaven, right? That's the way society works. That's the way our Creator made us. If everybody wasn't afraid of snakes and spiders and bugs, right? Think of the multi-trillion-dollar pest control industry that would go out of business, right? You need people to not like snakes so the people that do like snakes can take care of it, can fix that problem. But if you hate snakes, you shouldn't handicap yourself trying to be a snake lover and trying to get a job in animal control dealing with snakes because you hate snakes. There's a million other things you can do in life. Let the people that love snakes go take care of snakes because guess what? They're going to do the best job. They're going to be the most productive. They're going to name all their snakes. They're going to know all the different fangs and head configurations of the snakes that we don't care about because they love snakes, right? I got this. If you went to my demonstration wherever I'm at, I'm directionally challenged. I think I camped that way. See, I'm directionally challenged. I got a 20-foot radius antenna on the back of my car right now, right? It's weird. I'm a weird person, but I like that. And I can make money in electronics and I understand those things. A lot of other people don't like it. You celebrate your weirdness. It's these things that you're unique and different about that set you apart from everyone. That's how you make money. That's how you're successful. That's how you'll build your career and your lifestyle by not trying to get out of your comfort zone or trying to put yourself through some torturous course that you hate. It's about you being you and just figuring out how to monetize or how to market it. Let me tell you something. This is how I became rich. Rich is my middle name, by the way. No, that's not how I became rich. For 30 years, I conformed to the system, right? And when I wasn't conforming, I was fighting it. I love to swim upstream. Anybody here like this? Swim upstream? Purposely give the system a hard time? Yeah, you know what? Somebody was a John Cougar Mellencamp wrote a song. I fought authority. Authority always wins. Right? It's true, right? You don't get anywhere fighting the system. It's the system, right? The man is the man, right? He just is. You're not gonna win. So whether you conform to the system or whether you're in the system and fight it, you're not going to be doing yourself any favors. I did that for 30 years. As a little kid in school, fortunately for me, for my creativity, the reason I'm rich today is because ADD wasn't invented when I was a kid, right? Because they'd have put me on drugs and I'd have been zoned out and I'd have never known my creative, goofy part of my personality, right? Because that it made me sit in the chair in first grade and just sit there and listen. Fortunately, I didn't sit in the chair and I got, paddled and got in trouble and stuff. But I never liked school for that reason. Never liked it. As a result, I joined the Marine Corps at 17 because, I didn't have a whole lot of prospects, and the Marine Corps had great-looking uniforms, didn't they, Jim? Anyways. So I went in the military, though. What did I do? I had to conform. It was a different kind of conforming, more rigid in a lot of ways, but then I had to conform to that. And I already told you, I got stuck in that trap where I'm not going to be a quitter. We're going to win. We're never going to retreat. We're going to go forward, get the objective. It took me a long time to figure out that was the wrong thing. I eventually went to more school, went to the university after my initial stay in the Marines, and I got to at least choose some of the topics I wanted to study, so it wasn't as bad. But you know what? It was still, they call it a university like it's universal. No, they got one way of seeing things, one way of doing things, and if you don't see it that way, you're wrong, right? You F on that test or you answer that question wrong. And I'm not talking like math, man. We know 2 and 2 is 4. We don't debate that. But I mean, the other things. If you don't see it their way, and the funny thing about science is, 20 years from now, we know something's different. And they prove it all wrong. But for 40 years, you're a heretic if you question it. So I didn't find that in school, right? I didn't fit in at school. And had some more time in the military, end up in the corporate world because I can't take the military. By the way, I was in the military active duty for almost 10 years. A lot of people told me, hey, you're halfway there, man. Sweat it out. Really? For the next decade? Put up with crap that I hate, and it progressively gets worse, right, as you move up in the chain of command. You get up here, I hate what you do, but you got to make other people do what you know they hate to do. It's like, I can't do that. I don't care about the retirement. I'm moving on. Got in the corporate world. It was better because just like college, at least you could sort of choose some of the topics. Good part about the corporate world, corporate world mostly was as bad as the military. Only difference is you could quit, you didn't go to the brig, right? So you could quit your job. And every 3 or so years, I got another jerk, middle manager boss, and I had to move on and go somewhere else. So that's really how I survived in the corporate world for as long as I did. I also was mostly in sales and business development and in industrial sales, and so I could be 1,000 or 1,500 miles from headquarters, and that suited me just fine. I was a work from home, work out of the office guy long before that was popular, and that's literally how I survived. I knew that if I went out and sold materials or equipment or whatever, that I could make a lot of money and they'd leave me alone. But with all that, you know what? I was mediocre, right? I was mediocre at best. The sad thing was that I was above average in terms of my peers, right? I did better in the military than most people. I did better in the corporate world than most people. But you know what? I hated it. I wasn't enjoying it. And I was really just mediocre. Well, how did that change? I stopped conforming. I literally did. And I stopped conforming, and I went to that fighting first. I stopped conforming, and I swam upstream and tried to be a monkey wrench in the system just for fun. But then I realized that wasn't right. That's no different than conforming. I'm still just mediocre. I'm still part of the system, and I'm never going to change the system. And that's when it occurred to me to develop my own strengths. Get my non-dominant hand out of the air and put my strong arm up and take charge of my life. And the ideas that I had that other people thought were dumb or wrong or stupid or didn't apply here, well, I just tried to put them in action somewhere else. And if they worked, I did more. If they didn't work, I did less. And I just tried things. I tried to do things that I thought were right, that would move me in the direction that I wanted to be in. And it's not like happens overnight. And I literally say overnight success to be funny, right? Because I'm a 30-year overnight success. But literally overnight, at least when I started moving in that direction, I wasn't immediately successful, but I felt better. I was getting my soul back, right? My soul that had been stolen by the system was coming back to me. And every time I'd move in the right direction, I'd feel better. And it wasn't only just business things or, corporate structure, but, those of you that have been in the corporate world, I'd make a big sale, bring in some big business. And by the way, you know what happens, right? You bring in a big business, you get a big bonus check. The next year they reduce your territory and double your commission, double your quota. Yeah, I even forgot the word quota. I haven't said quota in almost 20 years because I don't have a quota, right? I work for myself. I'm competing against myself. I don't need a quota, and you shouldn't need a quota. Again, when you're in your own zone, there is no quota because it's infinite. I can't put a quota on myself because I've got infinite capabilities. Okay. But my boss, literally, I'd bring in all this business. I'd say, great. Next year, you lose that client. That's a house account, or I'm going to give that to my son-in-law. He'll take that. And you get this crappy territory. And by the way, since you did so well this year, sell twice as much next year. Right? And that's literally the way they treat you. But what they also do is they'll be like, hey, John, what you going to do with that big bonus? You gonna get a boat? You gonna get a second house on the lake? Huh? Why don't you move the golf course by me? Yeah, come on join my country club, right? Roping you in, getting you in that debt. Or they promote you. I remember after I got out of the military, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to Minneapolis. And as I told some people at lunch, even the military found me. I thought I was hiding in Minneapolis. They still found me. I went to Minneapolis, did a good job, got promoted. They sent me to St. Louis or somewhere. I did a good job. They sent me to Dallas, did a good job. They sent me to Atlanta. Right? Every time you do a good job, they generally send you to a bigger city. Bigger city means more expensive cost of living. So really that raise they gave you doesn't do anything. And then they talk you into buying the bigger house on the golf course with the boat and the lake house. And you know what? Pretty soon you're making more money than you ever thought you would make in your life. And you're more broke than you were when you started, right? Because you're looking at that paycheck and what it can buy you. You're not saving it. You're not investing it. Now, fortunately, I didn't go down that path because I was smarter than that. But that was the system I was in. And those were my peers around me. And I'm looking around all these people that have all these things, but no real value. And, my manager say, what are you going to do with your bonus? I say, well, my wife and I are thinking about having another kid, Imagine that. We're investing in children. And that's the way I live my life. So even when I was in the system, I figured out, stop fighting it and move towards what I wanted and build my dreams, follow my soul. I tell you that story, again, because I'm old enough where I can look back and see these things in my life. And literally, I can see every time I made a decision that went against what was really inside of me, it was the wrong decision. Didn't happen immediately, but I saw that even if it was a sacrifice initially, down the road it paid dividends. It was valuable. And you aren't like me, and I'm not like you, and we're all a little bit different. But y'all are unique, and we're in this tribe for a reason. But this is where I'm going to go to the other hand. Okay. On the other hand, even though we're all here for a reason and we have each other's backs and we have strength in our community, is the community holding you back? And I don't mean directly, because again, remember, it's yourself imposing this on yourself. But think about this. I want you to live or love in your tribe. Okay. I want you to trade with other tribes. Okay. This is the title of my presentation. And what do I mean by that? How many of you raise bees or honey? You have honey. No one? Well, used to. Okay, we got one. Well, how about anybody, I guess all the vendors out there, the guys that have the honey. Some honey guys, right? Or, okay, mushrooms. You raise mushrooms, right? Somebody here probably makes soaps or some kind of lotions or tinctures, right? Right over there, right? Somebody here probably has chickens for eggs or for meat, right? Rabbits, something like that. You have them, right? Milk. Somebody here has dairy cows or beef cattle, right? If you have milk, your milk you produce, and if you have milk you produce, yeah, you guys can barter back and forth, and you can trade your milk for maybe something they have tinctures and do your tinctures for their soap or something. But the value of what you have is diminished in the group, right? Because in that aspect, we are all the same. And while we can produce some and we can barter between ourselves, the real potential in what you do is probably outside the tribe, right? So I want you to live in your tribe. I want you to love your tribe. But when it really comes for your full potential and increasing your income and developing your business, it's not in the tribe, right? It's paradoxical, but it's outside your tribe. Right? Why is that? Well, these guys, they're not your tribe, right? They're not your tribe. They're probably nothing like you. Probably don't have anything in common. But the good part about that is, you know what they have plenty of? Worthless Federal Reserve fiat currency, right? And they don't know which end of a screwdriver to use, right? They couldn't tell a duck from a chicken. They don't know what end the egg would come out of either one of those birds, right? They just don't know. So the stuff you do is like magic to them. Okay, just like if you hate snakes, you're going to pay someone to come and take the snake out of your house. The things that you do that don't have as much value here as you'd like them to have are incredibly valuable here. So don't look at these people as not being your tribe. Look at them as your customer, right? They are your customer. And this is the area where you kind of, don't get out of your comfort zone, but get out of your tribe. Learn to talk to some of these people. Meet them. Go to their communities, right? Step outside our boundaries here and take what's unique about you and this tribe to them. And not because of kumbaya, we're all going to get along, right? I'm happy for Charlie Kirk's wife. What's her name? Erica Kirk. I'm happy that she is forgiving and can turn the other cheek. I haven't progressed that far in my Christianity, so I'm not there yet. But I'm not going there to be making peace with other tribes. I'm going there because it benefits me and my tribe, right? Because you can take the products that you make and the skills and abilities you have, and they're suddenly like 10 times more valuable over there than they are here in this community. So get out of the tribe. Go talk to them, and you have to speak in their language. I put permaculture up here just because I know some people might be into that. If you go, and permaculture's gotten more of a, social media has helped it become more recognizable what it is, but most people still have no idea what permaculture is. So if you're have a permaculture service or something that are related to permaculture, and you're trying to talk to one of these people that are outside the tribe, they don't know what you're talking about, right? You have to figure out how to take your products and your services and the benefits that they offer and translate it into that other tribe's language, because they do have a distinct language. And with that stuff I put up, I don't know, edible landscape, right? Maybe you can explain someone permaculture something like an edible landscape, right? Or just drought resistance or low maintenance. You have to put things in their terms because they're not going to understand yours, and they don't want to understand yours, right? And remember, they're the customer. They don't have to understand you. You just want to understand them so you can get hold of their worthless Federal Reserve notes. Okay? Again, I tell you this because it literally took me like 30 years to figure all this out. Not 30 years. The good part was, I mentioned me and my wife want to have kids. We had a big family. We had 6 kids. So I did figure this out at one point, and I couldn't go home and say, hey, honey, I figured out how I'm going to enrich my soul. I'm going to quit my job and get out of the system and go do my own thing, and I'm going to get rich. Yeah, right. We had 6 kids to feed. That wasn't going to happen. So I learned how to stay in the system, keep my head down, be the gray man, and progress towards my goals. And then when I was ready, I was able to walk away, right? I left on my terms, not on their terms. So I encourage you to think about that and ways you can do that. And if I can take any questions, what questions do you have for me?
All right, we have a question here. All right, where do you see gold and silver by year end?
Year end? Yeah, I have no idea. I can't predict the future, but I'll tell you this. It's gone up every decade, right? So I don't know where it's going to be by the end of the year, but when you're investing, whether you're investing in gold or silver, which are hard assets, whether you're investing in real estate, whether it's your home or a rental property, or if you're investing in buying Microsoft stock, it's all about value. What value is it going to have in the future? We know that gold and silver will have some value higher in the future than they have today, simply because we're printing money, right? We know that. So we know it's going to go up. We don't know so much as if Microsoft stock is going to go up for a different reason, right? But again, we're looking at them because we can look at the earnings and see what they sell people and know that that has value. So there are things within the system. I make all my money in the system, right? I'm not an alternative guy. I don't do alternative cryptocurrencies or anything like that. I make my money in the system. And if you want to stay in the system, there is more than enough ways to make money in the system, because the system is mediocre, like we've already talked about. And if you excel at whatever your God-given talent is, you'll be better than the system, and they'll have to pay you for it. I mean, it's like a law of economics, right? The money has to flow to you if you're operating a better business or offering a better product, or you're doing something more efficiently, or just honestly, right? Honesty is the most rare commodity in the economy. Honesty. If you are just honest. But yeah, gold, I don't know where it's going to be in the end of the year. It'll probably be more in 10 years. Hold it for 10 years.
Any other questions?
Rebecca.
Oh, a microphone. Do you have tips on how to figure out a way to communicate with those non-tribe customers?
Yes, and similar to the way we do it here. So how do you communicate with those non-tribe customers, or how do you learn their language? A lot like we do here. Where's your connections, right? You have a friend or a neighbor or somebody that lives somewhere else that is in that community, and you go there and you meet them. You know, why am I here today? Because I don't know, 10 years ago I met Nicole, right? I didn't know this community 10 years ago, and I first time I was here was 2 years ago, but I met Nicole like 10 years ago, and because we made that connection, I eventually got tied to this community. And look for the opportunities. Again, people are there, they want it. You know, with your services, right? We were saying before, every time I plug this thing into a monitor, it never works, right? That's why we need people like you, because it never works when I do it. And I don't want to figure out how to make it work, but you know how to do these things. And you have a YouTube channel, you're reaching out. Get out, fail, do the wrong thing, get rejected, and then do it again, and do it again. Any other questions? Did I scare everybody? Come on,
We
ask
have
some
one
questions.
more right here. Here we go. We got one.
You know, they always say in the military, they always just say there's no dumb questions. Listen, I've heard a lot of dumb questions, but none from here. There's not going to be any dumb questions here today.
So, John, with your podcast, how did you use that to help grow your side hustle? Would you recommend that as a way to saying, hey, something I'm good at, I might put some research in, but are you also using it as a promotional tool?
Yeah. So on my podcast, you know, I don't have sponsors. I don't have links. I don't have affiliates, any of that stuff. I started my podcast like, I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that. Basically out of frustration. And I had a friend, Jack Spirko, that did podcasts. And I thought, well, I'll do one. And I actually did 10 episodes. It was my wealth building principles. And I didn't know if I'd really do any more after that. And I asked Jack, I said, Jack, you know, you're like a genius at this. What do I do? And he said, get off your ass and go make podcasts, which was the best advice I ever heard. But my podcast is different. I'm not a content creator. That's obvious. Obviously, you've seen me give a presentation. I'm not a content creator. I manage money. I trade stocks. And so what I use my podcast for, very transparently and very honestly, I just tell people what I think, what I own, what I do. I don't care if they don't like what I do. I don't care if they're not interested. Right? I don't care about anything. I just put it out there. And over these 12 years, like, people have found me, and people that are interested in it stay. People that aren't interested in it don't ever come. And it's really that. Again, I would encourage, but it is an inflow to my business, right? Because when I started my business 15 some years ago, when I moved to Utah, I drew a 60-mile radius around my house because I've been traveling for 30 years. I went to China, went to Europe, went all in the military, went all around the world as well. And I was sick of traveling. I drew a 60-mile radius around my house, and I said, I am never leaving that radius again. And you know what? I'm here, right? And it was that podcast that people found me. And again, I don't. Do you listen to the podcast? Have you ever heard me do a commercial? I don't do commercials for other people. I just don't do them. There's no advertisement. There's no Patreon. I just literally, because I'm not a content creator. I wrote a book. A publisher approached me in 2015, 16 to write a book. I wrote a book, and at that time, there was a publicist associated with it. I had the biggest years I ever had on my podcast were 2016, 2017-ish when the book came out. And I had the choice then to go that content creating route. And I was like, no, that's not who I am. I want to trade and study my stocks and focus on my stocks and my stock investing. I don't want to create content. And that decision made my numbers go down in the podcast, but right, my business has never gone down. It keeps going up. So it is a feeder. And that's another thing. When you're doing what you love, okay, you're in that zone. I'm in that zone. I don't, if I'm trading stocks all day or studying the market or something all day, I forget to eat lunch or I forget to do whatever because I'm in that zone. But that zone, as you get good at it, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the podcast became part of my zone where I do and my podcasts are irregular, right? I'm like 12 years into it. I haven't even hit 500 episodes yet. They'll tell you, do one every Wednesday, right? You know what? I do one whenever I damn well feel like it, right? It's my business. It's my life, right? But it works. It works for me. And people that want something every day or every week, they don't listen to me, but that's okay. I'm not their guy. So be your own guy. What else? I won't yell at you much. I promise you. Much. I will tell you stop spending. I could have one of the biggest podcasts on earth if I told people how to get rich quick, right? I'd have to keep having a different audience though, because they'd know I was a phony, right? And so when I tell people, the biggest thing I tell people is save your money. You're not saving enough. And again, I could have a much bigger investment client base if I told them other things. But the thing I tell people is save your money. And that literally is the best thing you can start out doing. Save your money. My podcast has the 5 dumbest listener questions. And the number one is, how do I invest $1,000? Right? Because you don't invest $1,000. You save $1,000. But I could come up, I could be like all these spam that hit your email every day telling you how to invest $1,000. Right? It's all bullshit. All of it.
What are your biggest concerns for the market and economy in general in the next few years?
I'm worried about the midterm elections. I'd say more than anything, I say I'm worried about it. I think about it. I'm concerned. I'm not really worried about it. One thing I really focused on being a nonconformist. The other thing that really helped me build my wealth was learning to deal with what I could control, right? If I can control it, if I can influence it, that's what I focus on. Everything that's out here, I don't care. I've been alive since every president since John F. Kennedy. And I remember every president since Lyndon Johnson, right? They were all lying SOBs, right? Didn't matter, Republican, Democrat, none of them made me rich, none of them made me poor. I put that out of my mind. I just focused on what I can influence and what I control. And so the biggest thing though is midterm elections. I don't say that necessarily from a political thing. It's just that the economy, well, first of all, you notice the economy, Trump has destroyed the economy and the market's like this, right? It's going straight up. So what I'm worried about is that if he loses the House and the Senate and they start impeachment and all that stuff again, then they're going to save the economy and it'll tank. That's my biggest kind of short-term concern. Other than that, I'll tell you what, I'm not worried about anything. I've got 13, I'm going to have our 13th grandchild. This is the best time. Thank you. This is the best time to be alive in the history of humanity. The best time, right? I grew up in a world where a long distance phone call from New York to Los Angeles was like $100 a minute, right? The first cell phone I had was in my car, because I was a salesman, mounted in my car. You couldn't take it out. And it was 25 cents a minute when I wasn't roaming, right? When I was in my little 30-mile radius. Now, what can we do now? I guess we're probably live streaming this, or it's going out on the internet as I speak. That's like the Jetsons to me. I mean, there's never been a better time, right? I drew that 60-mile radius around my house. I got clients all over the country, right? I could have them all over the world if I wanted to go international. I just don't want to do that paperwork. There's never been a better time. And so and as far as all the negativity, U.S. dollar is going to lose reserve currency status. Last time I was in Switzerland, they weren't a reserve currency. They were doing pretty well. England, they lost the reserve currency a long time. Still plenty of rich people in England. I mean, there's all kinds of things people want you to worry about. And it's like, is it in your circle of control or influence? Who cares? right? If I'm renting out beachfront property in Malibu, I don't care if you're paying in dollars or yuan or yen or Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Because I've got beachfront property in Malibu. It has value. So, work on the value that you guys can create, and the money, the other stuff, it'll flow. If things get so bad that there is a total meltdown, right, we're all screwed anyways, right? So work on what's going to happen now. And I've lived through, you get one of those T-shirts that say I survived another crisis. I can tell you everything. The Russians invading Czechoslovakia in, I think, 1967, right? Like I was around then. The moon landing in 69, yeah, I was around then. All this stuff. The world goes on. And there's no, the song, God Bless America? It's wrong. It's not named that way. It should be God Bless America, right? This continent. Trump talks about Greenland. Long before Trump was ever on, I've always said from Alaska to and he talks about the Panama Canal, taking the Panama Canal. I've always said from Alaska to the Panama Canal, that part of the Western Hemisphere is the only thing that matters. We have all the resources. We have all the natural. Maybe there's some, element we don't have somewhere. But in terms of overall wealth for an economy, everything you can ever need is in that Western Hemisphere, and we're in the center of it. We're in the center, best part of it in terms of growing crops, river systems. No other country has a Mississippi network of rivers like we do. No other country has an ocean on either end, right? No other country has, basically a tundra wasteland to their north and a desert to their south that protects their borders. This is as bad as it's ever going to be anywhere else. The United States is the tallest midget, okay? No matter how bad it is other places. We are always going to be the best. So I don't buy into all the gloom and doom, and never been a better time to be alive.
All right, folks, if there are no more questions, let's give it up for John Pugliano. Have you told people about how they can find out more about you?
Wealthsteading Podcast. You can find me on the Wealthsteading Podcast.
All right. And he's around here for the rest of the day?
Rest of the day.
If you have your questions, you just didn't want to ask it publicly, he's wearing a blue shirt, guys. Can't miss him.
And I'll be taking apart that big 20-foot antenna, whatever we're that way.
All right, guys, we're going to move along. Just so you know, give it up one more time for John. All right, there's going to be an animal first aid demonstration. It's going to take place just on the other side of the TV in this wall. So if you would like to go watch that for the next, 30 minutes or so, it looks like. And then the last session of the day will be Nicole Sauce talking about abundance, not burnout. And her and I are going to do a few fun things with the prizes and some tickets and play some games. So go relax for a minute, get some water, hydrate or die, get a beer. I don't care. But get what you're going to get and come right back, and we'll see you right around 3:15.